This morning, I'm really pleased to be with Loris Clements. Loris has some fantastic perspectives to share on mental health and what she's been doing to be kind to her mind and others in her circle of influence during coronavirus lockdown. In terms of her career and business profession, Loris is an expert in helping businesses to connect with their audience through the power of the right words. So looking forward to hearing a bit more about that. Loris, thank you for making the time for us today. I know you've been very, very busy recently. Tell us more about you, your background and your work.
Yeah, hi Darryl. Thanks for talking to me. As you've said, I'm a copywriter and brand builder, and my focus really is on helping businesses to connect with their audiences. I like to work with them to make sure that they've got the strongest message out there possible, and help them to engage through the power of really good quality writing. I spent about 25 years in marketing and brand building, and it's only about 10 years ago, I suppose, that I realised that the thing that I loved most about my job was the writing, was getting those messages across. And so I left my job in higher education marketing about 5 years ago to set up my own business. I've been working freelance ever since with various companies, large and small, working on supporting all of their copywriting and messaging needs. It's fascinating with so many people in different types of industries and learn lots about what makes their different industries and their customers tick, and the relationships that you build and what they learn about themselves is always really, really interesting.
Fantastic. It sounds like you've definitely found your place there in helping.
Yeah, it kind of feels like I finally found my niche. Yeah.
Good. Fantastic. Well, on the topic of mental health, what does mental health mean to you, and why do you feel it's something that others should do more about?
I think it's a really interesting question, and obviously there's a huge stretch in terms of what mental health is about. There are some really seriously challenging mental health conditions out there which a lot of people struggle with. I'm fortunate in that I've never had to struggle with any of the really, really serious conditions that really affect people's lives badly. But in my personal sphere of experience, I'd say that for mental health, maintaining my own mental health, has been about not getting blindsided by when things go wrong, and having the ability to cope when life throws stuff at you that you weren't expecting, or that is just knocks your plans out of the water. Being able to cope with that and just not let every little thing knock you over, I think, is that mental health resilience.
Fantastic.
For me.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I think I'm not always necessarily very good at it. I haven't always been terribly good at it myself. There have been times when I've allowed things to hit me a bit harder than perhaps they might have done. I think if you're not mentally fit, and it's far too easy to slide into destructive behaviours and to let things go a bit, and the further you let things go, the harder it comes from them. And this current situation is a point, really, with the coronavirus pandemic in full swing at the moment, and we've all had to make sudden massive changes in the way that we live our lives. If we've got worries about our own health, the health of our friends and family, our finances, what's going to happen in the future, it's got massive potential to derail us. So, sort of focusing on your mental fitness a bit makes you more able to deal with that, just as being physically healthy makes your body more able to cope with infection and fight it off sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Loris. I have to agree with you on that. So thinking about some of the things you've done over time, and maybe even more so during coronavirus pandemic, are there any top tips that you can share that you've things you've done for yourself to boost your mental health positively, or even as you help your family and your circle of influence? Some best practice.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, in terms of best practice, what I should say, obviously, I'm not a mental health expert. I can only talk from my own personal experience. I think that finding positive things to do is something that I found really helpful. Certainly in the current in the current situation, music is a big one for me. When I'm not doing my writing, I'm a very keen singer and pianist, and I play a number of musical instruments. Although most of them I haven't actually played for about 1,000,000 years, but I do enjoy them. So I've found that doing more music during this period has really helped. So usually I sing in a choir, and I can't go out and meet up with my choir friends and sing with them. But getting involved in some of the online isolation choir projects has been really, really positive. But just just playing the piano, spending time on those musical activities is a real boost. In fact, I was reading something the other day that there was some scientists talking about the positive impact that music has on your emotions, and certainly from my own personal experience, I can say that's true. Also, I think it's probably really who've got kids at home and they're trying to homeschool, to work from home, or they've got really serious worries about things. But I think that sometimes focusing on somebody else other than yourself can be really, really positive. One of the things I've been doing is actually helping to keep my sister's kids occupied. They're in Spain, they're under much stricter lockdown than we've had. Both their parents are trying to work from home, and they're stuck in a fairly small apartment. They've got a balcony, but they're not allowed outside at all. They're not even allowed outside for days over there. So I've been daily challenges to keep the kids occupied with, and they've been really enjoying it. And we've had a lot of fun sharing videos, and they've done their blog every day saying what they've been up to, and that's really fun to watch and to read. And thinking up new ideas for them and sending them little videos to keep them occupied and entertained I think it's been a real boost to me, as well as helping them out.
Yeah, I just say a few things. That I think that's the first time I've heard of that as a homeschooling hack through coronavirus. So it's something I'm going to now create some plans to do that within our own sort of extended family. And as you say, what I particularly like about that is it's great for your own mental health, because you're virtually getting out of your home and you're having some distraction, and you're doing something good for your sister's family and spending quality time with your nieces and nephews. And there's this amazing thing there where as a parent myself, and for the parents watching this video, that kids have this innate ability to be particularly well behaved and follow instructions particularly well when it's someone other than their own parent giving that instruction or making that request.
Absolutely.
So I just think that's
my sister.
one.
Yeah, my sister has said to me that if it had been her trying to get them to do these things, they would just roll their eyes at her and just go, "Oh, Mom," and they'd never do it. But it's the power of the auntie, and they've just been begging for these challenges every day. And if I forget to send them one for the day, I get told off.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Well done. And just on the music front as well, a big lover of music myself, listening to music every single second that I get the opportunity, much to the annoyance of others around me sometimes when we're under the same roof. I've lined up an interview. We're just playing around with the dates, where we're doing an interview under this series, and
Mm-hmm.
the person I'll be interviewing will be creating the topic with me of the relationship between music and mental health. And this chap's one of the world's leading experts on creating, composing music for promoting well-being, driving good mental health, and so on. And he knows all of the science behind it as well. So like talking about binaural beats and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to meeting him and sharing that. I think you'll like that video, Loris, as well.
Yeah, I should really look forward to seeing that. There is some fascinating stuff out there about the impact that that making music, and particularly singing, has on the brain. It's really, really interesting. So I think if you can, it's a really positive one to help. Although I have to say, I've been a little bit careful about it, and particularly when I've been practicing my saxophone, I've been keeping that to only 10 minutes at a time, because I'm concerned about the impact on my neighbour's mental health. If I'm with my saxophone practice for too long, it's a bit loud.
Very considerate of you, Loris. Thank you.
Yeah.
So some of yourself, you've obviously got experience running and building your own business in recent years, and before that, you've had the experience of being employed in that, let's say, kind of larger business corporate environment. So that gives you quite an interesting experience and perspective. Have you got any advice that you could share with the business leaders and working adults in our audience around what they can be doing to support each other more through with mental well-being? Particularly at the moment, so we've got remote working, and we've got increased isolation. Lots of people aren't used to working from home kind of on a permanent basis. Have you got any advice there around how employees and employers can work together to promote well-being through this time?
That's a really interesting one. I think from my own, I'll talk a little bit about employers and the mental health within the workforce, because I had some experience of this a few years ago. Before I left my job in a university, I did have a bit of an episode of a fairly poor mental health and resilience, and in fact, I suffered from quite high levels of stress and anxiety. I ended up being off sick for quite some time. It was about a month, I think, from my job. And when I came back, there was, and the first thing to say is that, my employer was really helpful. The HR department in particular, they were great about it. But there was a bit of a disconnect between the way different parts of the company dealt with it. I was getting some advice from some people, and then perhaps my line manager wasn't necessarily quite linked up with that. So I got some quite conflicting messages about, how to manage the stress, how to try and adjust things in my role, make sure that I was able to recover from this. So I think the one thing I would say to employers is that it's really important to make sure that everybody is aware of mental health issues, and that if you do have policies and ways of dealing with people and helping people, that everybody needs to be joined up and giving the same messages, because it can actually add to the problem if you're getting different messages from different people. You actually sort of feels as though it's putting you under pressure to manage the situation yourself, rather than getting the help that you need. Obviously, that was a very different thing, because that was in a large work environment, and weren't working from home, and sort of forced to work in isolation like we are at the moment. I think now, I think it's very important to recognise that everybody's going to be dealing with this differently. Whilst there are common concerns, with isolation, which can in itself lead to, sort of feelings of anxiety and perhaps exacerbate feelings of depression. There's obviously, there's concerns about people's financial future, their health. There's having to homeschool them. there are all sorts of common issues, but everybody does deal with it differently. So I think I would probably say that, keeping in touch with people as much as possible, using this sort of technology is great. Being able to see people face to face, but just having, having an awareness that people are struggling, and that it's not just the people who've been perhaps sort of laid off on furlough that are struggling, but also the people who are still working, who are trying to get things going, and just being aware that it is difficult for everybody is really important.
Definitely, I think that's fantastic advice, Loris. Thank you for sharing that with our audience. And just to add some of my own context to that, there's absolutely a spectrum of how badly different people are affected. I mean, some it's where everyone's affected in one way or another, just in lots of different ways. And even then within that, depending on where people were at before this crisis, depending on where their mental health already was, in some cases the crisis can be amplifying and making some of this stuff worse. And I think it's like 1 in 5 working adults before coronavirus were predicted through extensive research that they were predicted to be having or about to go through some poor mental health illness over the next 12 months. And my prediction is that 25% is going to be much higher during and beyond this crisis. And I think we have to amplify that and have each other's backs more, and be more mindful and supportive of different people's situations, and work on these problems together. And if the more we can join together, I think the better we'll be for coming out of this, and we'll get through it more easily. It's like the whole old phrase of 2 heads are better than one, or a problem shared is a problem halved.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
I think something else I'd like to add is about knowing where to go to ask for help. And I think if you're an employer of people, making sure that the people that you're responsible for, whether they're still working or whether they're on furlough, making sure that they know where they can go to get help, because you as a manager might not be the right person to help them, but there will be somewhere where they can go, whether it's to somebody who's in your company's HR department or to an outside organisation. I think just making sure that people know where to get help is really, really vital. I mean, years ago, before I had this particular problem, years ago, I was very close to somebody who had a very serious mental health issues. In fact, he's no longer with us. I didn't know it at the time, but that's probably where my own feelings of stress and anxiety really began. And I had no idea who to ask and where to turn to. And I think that knowing, and there are so many organisations out there where you can get advice. I'm not going to name any particular ones, because the right organisation will depend on the particular circumstance that somebody's in. Yeah. But knowing where to go for help is really vital. So I think if you are an employer, or if you're worried about people, just doing a bit of research and having some contacts that you can pass on to people if necessary is really useful.
Brilliant. I think that's fantastic advice, Loris. Thank you. So I think that kind of leads into my next question. So we've kind of half answered it, but it's an important one anyway. So it's good if we repeat it a bit to amplify the importance. And it was, what advice would you give to someone watching this video right now, if someone who's concerned about their own mental health right now, or if they're confident that their own is fine, but they're worried about someone in their circle of influence, a colleague, a teammate, a friend, a family member? What advice? What 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give to anyone in those situations?
Okay, so I would say that if you are concerned about mental health of a family, or a colleague or a friend or somebody, one of the easiest traps to fall into is thinking that you can fix somebody yourself, just by being nice and supportive and all the rest of it. That's if it's somebody really close to you. That's a really easy trap to fall into. And the chances are that you can't do that, and that person is going to, if they have got serious mental health issues, that they're going to need some professional help. Another trap to fall into is not to reach out. And I think one of the most important things to do is to reach out. If there's somebody close to you who is suffering from mental health issues, they may not wish to, or be in a place where they're able to reach out for themselves, and they may need you to do that for them. They might not necessarily thank you for it at the time, but they will in the future. So I think it's really easy to feel as though you can't talk about it. There's still a stigma, there's still associations, and people are still afraid of talking about it. And so I think the biggest thing I would say is don't be afraid to talk about it and to ask for help from somewhere. If you're worried about yourself, I think that advice goes double, really. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You're not being silly, you're not being weak. Put your hand up and say help.
Yeah, brilliant, fantastic.
Most important to say.
Simple but effective.
Yeah, and I think if you're concerned about sort of the current situation, but you're just worried about where things might go, I think there are just some really, really simple things to watch out for. Lifestyle can really, really make a difference. And I'm not saying that a healthy lifestyle can cure all ills, but if you're worried about the way things are going, relying on alcohol or relying on caffeine to keep you going, whatever your proper choice is, it doesn't help. In the long run, it's not going to help. So, but exercise, a good diet, and plenty of sleep will help in the long run. As I say, they won't cure everything, but getting those positive routines in place can actually make quite a big difference. I think certainly does for me. I don't always practice what I preach, but I know that when I do, I feel a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, that's good advice. I think none of us are perfect, and even if we are kind to our minds and look after our health most of the time, I think because life can be short and we need to enjoy ourselves too. So the odd glass of wine or whatever.
Yeah.
It's always about doing things in moderation and having a good balance between sort of fun and I guess general well-being, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Loris, thank you so much for your time today. It's been brilliant to interview you, and you've certainly shared some very kind insights and advice for our audience on how they can create great mental fitness for themselves and everyone in their circle of influence at home and at work, which is increasingly important through the corona crisis. And I'd like to thank our audience for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel underneath this video clip, and hit notifications so you don't miss out on some of the other great interviews and hack videos that we've got lined up for you. And everyone stay safe and help save lives. Thanks, Loris. See you soon.
Thanks, Darryl.